All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Facebook Live. Today, we are very, very excited to have Howard and Linda with RV Dreams joining us. We're going to be discussing Alaska, rvdreams.com, and a recent announcement and changes in their world. Stick around to the end of the video for an upcoming event that they're hosting. Howard and Linda, welcome to Facebook Live with Wholesale Warranties.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Great to be
My
with you
name
guys.
is Jim Hoffman. I'm Vice President here at Wholesale Warranties. So I have to apologize for last week. We had some technical difficulties. Ironically, it's kind of what we'll be talking about in today's Facebook Live. We will talk about planning, and apparently we just did not plan enough. And so I think we're going to take away some good tips from Howard on that one. For most of you probably already know, but RV Dreams is a great resource in the RV community, has a phenomenal following and dedication. They've been really great partners with Wholesale Warranties over the years. And if you're joining us, we ask you to share your kind of RV destination. It says for me to ask for you to share your #1 spot, but I think you might want to keep that close to the chest. So just share a favorite spot of yours, unless you're comfortable. Share a bigger spot. But kind of be that as it may, I wanted to kind of start off with planning. We follow your blog religiously around here, so we know you put a lot of time and effort into putting planning into your trip into Alaska and Canada. Howard, can you tell me a little bit more, or tell us a little bit more on how you plan for such a big trip?
There are a lot of logistics to go into Alaska, and we complicated things for ourselves on this trip because we wanted to do some of the Inside Passage, which is the southeast part of Alaska, which is only accessible by boat or plane.
Oh, wow.
So in order to do that, to visit the capital city of Juneau and the other towns in the what they call the Panhandle or the Southeast, the Inside Passage, you can go by ferry, and you can take your RV on the ferry. But that creates a lot of extra expense and a whole lot of extra planning. And after doing it this one time and spending so many hours on just that part, I don't know that I would even recommend doing it again. So we went up early. We crossed into Canada 1st of May, and by May 10th, we were in Alaska on the ferry sailing from Prince Rupert. But the Alaska ferry system is having financial troubles, so they have eliminated Prince Rupert, British Columbia as a port. So now you can't even do what we planned to do. So it's kind of about the rest of the trip to Alaska and the planning and where you want to be at different times and what activities you really want to participate in. One of the things that struck me when I first started the planning was it's a long, long drive. So you have to take that into account. I mean, the Alaska Highway is 1,400 miles, but it's 800 miles from the U.S.-Canada border to get to the start of it. So you're driving 2,000 miles each way in Canada to do the Alaska trip. So there is a lot of planning of that portion and understanding the expense of gas. It's much more expensive in Canada. It's more expensive in Alaska, not quite as bad. So there are a lot of things that you have to think about from a financial standpoint, as well as timing. You go up too early and the roads aren't open. You stay too long, campgrounds closed. June, July, and August, especially July and August, are the most popular times, so campgrounds fill up. I mean, there's just a lot of logistics to planning the trip. So a lot of it's about what you want to do while you're there. We did a lot of fishing. Well, you kind of have to plan around the salmon runs when you're doing that. If you want to see the mountain Denali, the best times are earlier in the summer. But the most popular times, the warmer temperatures, are later in the summer when it's rainy season and it might be clouded in. So there are a lot of things to think about. If you want to camp in Denali, you have to plan, you have to make reservations there. we found that we didn't have to make reservations a whole lot of places, but Denali was one of them, and a few of the other campgrounds. If you're willing to boondock, you don't have to plan as much. If you have some solar panels and are willing to park without hookups, then you have a lot more flexibility.
Wow, I mean, not only the little idiosyncrasies about the trip, but just putting in perspective, just the 2,000 miles from the U.S. border just to get to Alaska, that within itself is a trip. I mean,
right.
Literally, and,
it is.
and being able to plan. And I appreciate you bringing up whether it's the road closures or the campgrounds being closed. I think that is vital information for anybody who's looking to embark on a trip like that. So I kind of have to ask, what inspired you for you guys to take that plunge to head up and make that trip?
Well, Alaska is what started our whole RV Dreams adventure. We went up in 2004, Linda and I, for 2 weeks before we ever started RVing. Spent time up there kind of in the backcountry and disconnected from the real world for a couple of weeks, and found we reconnected. And that's where we really knew that our love of travel and nature was something that made us happier. Yeah, we were living a pretty good life, but that just made us happier. And we came back from that trip and decided we need to make some life changes. We're working good jobs, but stressful jobs. Maybe we can scale back in some way. And it was Alaska that did that, just being there and seeing the immenseness of it and the nature. And we came back, and
so we always said that we wanted to go back.
Yeah.
Because we only got to spend 2 weeks up there, but it changed our lives. Those 2 weeks changed our lives forever. And we always said we would go back, and when we went back, we would do it right. We would give it its due, because when we left in 2004, when we left Alaska, I couldn't stop crying as I was looking out the plane window and seeing the Alaskan range off in the distance. And I just couldn't help it. I was just, tears were just flowing. That's how big of an impact that trip had on us. And so once, I always knew I didn't want to take the big fifth wheel that we had for so long, because I had a lot of anxiety with that, traveling long distances. And so I had always told Howard, when we go to Alaska, I want to be in something small, smaller than what we had.
Yeah.
So
so for 13 years, we had a 40-foot fifth wheel with 4 slides and a big truck. And then a year and a half ago, in 2018, we downsized to a Class C. And that became part of the planning process now that we were in something smaller. And we were dealing with, I was dealing with elderly parents, and I didn't want to get up to Alaska and then have to come back for health reasons in the middle of it. So, unfortunately, they passed away in 2014 and 2016, but that kind of opened up our abilities to stay longer and to plan a really, what we call an epic Alaska trip.
Yeah. I mean, I admire you guys so much in the essence where you had a life, you had a significant life-changing event. And
yes.
People often talk about them, but yours back in 2004, getting to Alaska, sounds like it really had such a strong emotional and life-changing impact on you guys.
Absolutely.
And then it's very, very impressive that even though it was 10, 15 years later, it got you guys to go back there and you wanted to do it right. So that's a really inspiring story to hear. That's really cool, guys. Yeah. But even with all the logistics that Howard put into it, and even all the planning, and knowing a little bit about how minute he may look into some of the planning, what were some of the logistical challenges that you guys faced?
The ferry going on strike.
Yeah,
that was a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, we used the ferry for the inside passage, but then we also took a ferry trip from Homer to Kodiak Island. We wanted to spend a little time on Kodiak Island, which not a lot of RVers do. And we left the RV in Homer, and we just took our Jeep across on the ferry. And the day we arrived in Kodiak Island, the ferry went on strike. The ferry workers went on strike.
Wow.
So we got stuck on Kodiak Island, not being able to get off, and not having an RV to stay in. We had to figure out where we were going to stay. So those were some logistics.
So we had to ship our Jeep back by barge.
Yeah.
And then we flew to Anchorage and then down to Homer.
So,
and then our Jeep was being taken to Seward. So then we had to drive the motorhome down to Seward to pick. It was definitely.
Yeah. One of my biggest pieces of advice on planning an Alaska trip is get a big map. Get a big old map, and until you see how big it is and the roads, and start learning what roads go where and the names of them, because they all have names. Some of them don't make sense. Some of them make perfect sense. But as big as Alaska is, by far our biggest state, there are only about 1,800 miles of paved roads. So you can only go so far in your RV, but understanding where the towns and where the attractions are and which roads you take to get to them is a big, big part of the upfront planning. Once you get familiar with that, then by the time you get there, then you understand what you're doing a whole lot better. It makes things a lot easier once you get there. So get out a map, look at the roads, find the names of the roads, which roads connect which towns, and really study that from the beginning.
And then we also had an electrical issue with the RV. So we also had to work in service on the RV, which was a whole lot of fun. And of course, all RVers know how much fun service is. Yeah. And
all RVs break on weekends.
Yes.
Sure. And holidays.
Yeah. Right.
So we had to work that into our plan.
Yeah, our deal happened to be under a recall we didn't know about, and so Winnebago fixed it under the recall, but the only authorized dealer was in Anchorage, and we were nowhere near Anchorage at the time.
We were 700 miles from Anchorage.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
we were in Haines.
So we had to go to Anchorage and have it diagnosed, and then it was 10 to 14 days to get the parts to fix it. So we just went back out and kept on our itinerary, and and they fixed it on the 4th of July. So, so that's part of RVing, that's just, it's part of the deal. And, but yeah, other than that, Denali reservations,
fires.
There were a lot of fires in the southeast in the Kenai Peninsula this summer. So we kind of had to work around the smoke and the fires. Changed our plans a little bit here and there, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So the other thing we did was we went to Katmai National Park, which again, the only way you can get there is by plane. So Katmai is an unbelievable place to view brown bears, coastal brown bears, but it's so popular. There's a lodge there. The lodge is really expensive. Like $400 per person per night, but they have a campground that's $12 per person per night for tent camping.
Right.
But the permits go on sale on one day, and the end of that day, they all sell out for the summer.
Sure.
So that's the other thing that you have to plan well in advance if you want to go do that. That was one of the most unbelievable experiences that we had in Alaska.
It was definitely one of the highlights.
Definitely one of the highlights.
Top
but
3.
It certainly creates more logistical analysis to make it, to pull it off and get there at the right time. And
we found a place in Anchorage to store the RV and the Jeep while we went there. And so that was nice to be able to just put it in storage for a few days and then fly to do Katmai and then come back and pick it up. So.
Wow. Now, you mentioned, well, you mentioned a lot of things that I want to make sure I touch on. Obviously the bears, because that's very exciting. But when you were mentioning even before the fires, you were mentioning you had to have your Jeep shipped, which I think some of us can say, oh yeah, I've lost a bag here or there on an airplane and it goes there. But when you're talking about a car, that's a whole different scenario. And buyers kind of having to pivot and find some, alternate or make different arrangements for your plans. How much thought or how much advice do you give on the type of season or the timing that you try to do it? Because it sounds like you got to kind of keep your head on a swivel as you're doing it almost regardless. But what would you encourage people to do out there or for the seasonality?
Most people will head up around middle of June, planning to arrive at the Alaska border around middle of June, and then being on their way to exiting Alaska around September 1st. So that's typically what most people do. It gives them a good 2.5 months in Alaska. We would recommend a little more time if you can pull it off, if you have it in your schedule. The earlier you go, the more risk you take of weather. But still, I think by 1st of June, people will be okay. By September 1st, some of the campgrounds start closing down. As you come through Canada, some of them will close around September 15th. So we got back into the U.S. around September 21st, I believe it was. And that worked out. That worked out fine.
Mm-hmm.
But most people spend the time in July and August just simply because it's warmer. I would recommend going earlier than that to beat some of the crowds. You'll get a little bit better, clearer weather, even though it might be cold at night.
Sure.
But yeah, spend as much time up there as you possibly can. I mean, it's a big state. There's a lot to see. And as much as we saw, we were still on the move. We were in the state for 4 months and on the move quite a bit to see what we did. And, visiting there's 8 national parks, but only a couple of them are easily accessible. So if you want to visit the other ones, it's expensive and it takes even more planning.
Right.
So
planning is key. For those that haven't done it or for those that might be looking to do it here in the future, you mentioned a couple of things, which is you obviously have to cross a couple of borders to get there and take a couple of ferries.
You don't have to take ferries.
You don't have to, but for those that have never done it who are thinking about it, what would your guys' advice kind of be with that? That to me seems like a daunting task to get an RV on a ferry and just the logistics behind it. And
well, now since they closed Prince Rupert, to take the ferry up to put your RV on a ferry for the inside passage, your choices are to leave from Bellingham, Washington, and take that inside passage to either Haines or Skagway. Haines or Skagway are the only 2 towns in the inside passage that you can connect by road to the Alaska Highway. So assuming you leave from Bellingham and you go to Haines or Skagway and don't get off the ferry, that's like a 3.5 day trip constantly, so you're not really getting off the ferry. It's not good for pets. You have to keep in mind that your propane is turned off on your refrigerator. So, that's a long time if you leave the refrigerator closed, it should be okay. But you have to think about that. You're not going to have propane on those long trips. Our desire was to get off and on the ferry with our RV and spend a few days in each port. That just about doubles the cost, and it triples or quadruples the hassle of the planning.
But he did all of that, so I just drove. I say, okay, where are we going? Because I do all the driving. So, he would just be sitting in the passenger seat saying, okay, this is where we're going. This is what time we have to be there for the ferry. We had some crazy ferry schedules. Like one time it was 2:00 in the morning that we were getting on a ferry.
Ooh.
It was crazy.
Because a lot of the ferry schedules are based on the tides.
Right.
So, I'm telling you, it's not worth it to do that planning. I mean, I'm glad we did it, but I wouldn't do it again. And if your rig is 30 feet and under, it's a tad easier. If you're over 30 feet, it's much, much harder.
Right.
Yeah.
And you touched on pets, but I'll go back to pets.
Yeah.
On the ferry, pets have to stay in the vehicle, which is on the car deck of the ferry. And people are not allowed on the car deck unless it's in port. So some of these ferry rides would be 13 hours, 9 hours, where pets would have to be in the car all that time,
Right.
and you cannot access your car.
Oh my God.
So
Yeah.
most RVers are, you know, I'd say a good portion of RVers have pets. So that kind of rules out the ferries in those areas. But ferries in general that are just quick trips, you know, going across whatever, you just listen to the people who are loading you, and they tell you exactly what to do as you're driving on. They watch your tail end to make sure you're not going to scrape. They'll lower the ramp and all of that to help you get on without scraping the bottom of the RV. So you just pretty much have to listen and watch the ferry workers, that because they're so accustomed to doing it. But it's not hard. I mean, I did it the whole time, off and on, off and on. So don't be afraid of ferries, but if you have pets and you're on a long one, it can really be difficult.
Yeah.
No, the pet advice is really, really good. I don't know if many would. I didn't know that you couldn't go down there for 9 to 13 hours. I mean, that is a long stint of time.
Right. Yeah. You can't sleep in your RV. So, you know, yeah. And the schedules are crazy. Not every ferry, the ferries don't go to every port every day. So like I said, if you're planning on getting on and off the ferry, it just really, really complicates things and pretty much doubles the cost. So
new business for you, Howard. You can plan that for people.
I don't know that they would pay me enough to do that for other people, but
I would venture to guess there is a demand out there for somebody to have it planned out as well as you plan stuff out. I would think there is. So you guys are in Alaska, and you mentioned it earlier, Linda. You said in your top 3. So what is your top 3 favorite destinations when you were in Alaska?
I don't know if they're destinations, but experiences.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I'd say the top, seeing the Northern Lights. Oh my gosh. We got to see the Northern Lights on the last night we were in Alaska. It was kind of like serendipity that Alaska was saying goodbye to us. I got goosebumps just saying that. It was the most spectacular thing that I've ever seen. It was amazing. It was a beautiful display. Yeah. So that's one of the, and then Katmai, I would say probably is number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. The Northern Lights, I mean, and that's luck. The Northern Lights, that time of year is luck, but again, that goes into the planning process. The closer you are to the Fairbanks area towards the end of your trip, the better chance you have of seeing the Northern Lights. And we just got incredibly lucky with a wonderful display on the very last night we were there. Katmai, again, you can't take your RV over there. It takes more planning. But that was an amazing experience to spend 4 nights there in a campground surrounded by an electric fence, and you're walking on trails with 700-pound bears that might just walk around the corner. It's like Jurassic Park.
If you love bears or just in awestruck with bears, Katmai is the place to go.
Brooks Camp in Katmai National Park. Yeah.
It's amazing to just be walking on a trail and they let you, first of all, that, you know, this is a national park and they let you walk on these trails when at any moment you can encounter, you know, a brown bear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it
Yeah.
was something. It was.
So I'll bring that back full circle. You know, if bear viewing is one of your things that you really want to do in Alaska, that goes into planning.
Right.
Because the bear viewing is only good at
when the salmon
when the salmon are running at different spots in Alaska. So if you don't, you can't just go to a place known for bears at any old time. You have to figure out when the best times to be viewing them, or you'll get nothing. So again, it goes back into the logistics of trying to plan for what you want to see.
All right. So number 3, what would be?
Well,
number
Denali
3?
National Park is always, it's nice and accessible. And if you've never been there, you have to go. If you get to see full Denali Mountain, the tallest mountain in North America, that's a bonus. On, you know, only in the summertime, only about 30% of people get to see it. It kind of has its own weather system, and it's often clouded in. Ironically, Denali National Park is not necessarily the best place to see the mountain. So from the road going up to Denali, from Denali, there's a Denali State Park to confuse things,
Right.
and there's good viewing from there. But Denali National Park, as far as wildlife and accessibility, it's something in beauty. It's something to be seen. We did what is called a discovery hike, and that is we signed up, and a ranger chooses an off-trail hike to take about a dozen people on. So you just get on a bus with a ranger and you go out in the wilderness, and they have chosen a hike, and you're walking off-trail.
Well, there are no trails.
There are no trails, right?
You're just walking in bush. Basically.
Yeah, so you're just walking in the Denali Alaskan bush with your own private ranger and on a discovery hike, and that's something I would highly recommend in the National Park of Denali.
I would also highly recommend for your trip to Alaska is to definitely take a fjords boat tour wherever you want to take, but go to a fjords where there is a tidal calving glacier, where the glacier's calving into the water. And those are in lots of different places. So that to me is a must do in Alaska, is to go see a glacier calving. One of my favorite things to do is to watch those things calve. It's a blast. You would never in your mind think, how can that be entertaining? But you just cannot believe how entertaining it is.
Yeah. And doing that in Kenai Fjords National Park out of Seward, that's probably the top destination and the most accessible for most people to do that.
What I truly love about your guys' recommendations, or your top few, is that you start off with something that literally is just kind of meant to be. When you hear about your story about 2004, how the trip to Alaska was a life-changing event for you. And then some people might say, ironically, or luck, maybe it just was meant to be, but on your last night in Alaska, the northern lights appear. Then you transition over to where you're like, I'm just going to walk around with some 700-pound bears and just live on the wild side. You know, I love that's right behind the northern lights. And then you follow it up with walking in the bushes and really seeing Alaska for what it was meant to see, right? It's going out with a ranger and really getting out there, not on a signed path or anything like that, really exploring. Arcadia.
No.
Right?
Denali.
Sorry. And then on the last one is the glacier, and seeing what, you know, the glacier and the ocean kind of mix match. I love that you go from the northern lights to walking with bears. I do have to ask, when you're walking on these paths, is there a guide, or
No?
You're just out there?
You're just out there. It's
you go to, when you first arrive at Brooks Camp, you do a half-hour bear school, Bear 101.
And
Okay.
it is a video. It's a video.
Yeah.
Either way, it's Bear 101, and I'm super excited about it.
Right.
What-
It's
what
Bear
is-
101
They tell you what to do
and what not to do.
and what not to do. And yeah, you're not allowed to carry any food in your backpack, no lunch, no nothing, water
Nothing
only.
with a scent.
Nothing
You
at all
can't
with a
carry
scent.
anything with a scent.
And
No
but
bear
they
spray.
No bear
no
spray.
bear spray.
Bear spray. Okay.
No.
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 So
I
yeah.
feel like I have to take this bear school just for my survival, just in case.
Well, there's so many salmon there. They're not really interested in the people. It's just
Right.
it's been for years this way, and it's amazing. The bears, especially the mothers with the cubs, they're more concerned with the other bears than with the people.
They are. They're more
Yeah.
concerned with other bears.
And there's so much food, they're
Yeah.
certainly not looking at us. We're just kind of a minor distraction.
The ones you had to really be careful of were the juveniles, the subadults,
Adolescent.
because they're mischievous and playful. And
Oh, human, let's go roll that
yeah,
around.
let's go play with that human. And believe it or not, they tried to on one of the things we were doing, but it was surreal to be walking on a path and not just going out to the falls to see where they fish on the falls. That's the famous part where you see them catch the fish in midair when the fish are trying to get up the falls. But you can be in camp where the lodge is, and bears will just walk right by the building. A sow and her 2 cubs, she nursed her cubs right outside the window of the building where we were eating dinner. We got to watch her nurse her babies right outside our window.
Yeah.
I mean, they're everywhere. They're just everywhere. And what's so cool is that the bear managers, what they call bear managers, all the bear managers are there to do is to make sure, of course, that people are safe.
Right.
But they want to allow the bears to do natural bear things. But if they're doing something that's not natural bear behavior, then they call it, we're going to haze them, which means they'll make noise with sticks, they'll yell, something like that to get them to stop doing what they're doing, like chewing on the fences and gates. And the babies, oh my gosh, at Brooks Camp, there's probably 100 float planes that are tied up to the shore where people fly in and on these float planes.
Mm-hmm.
The babies have found that they love to pull the plugs out of the float plane floats because they like the sound that it makes when they pull those stoppers.
So
or
the
whatever.
bear managers they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah.
If a bear may just decide to take a nap on a trail. And you have to wait until it wakes up. They give them an hour before they'll come and move. So you may just get, if you have a flight back, you may be an hour late.
I mean, in their defense, they're doing bear things.
That's right. And that's why they don't want to move them if they're doing something natural.
And that's why it's such an amazing place.
It is. It's amazing.
Oh, so great.
But then, we didn't even talk about fishing.
Oh my God.
I mean, if you get into that, that's a whole other planning strategy to get with the salmon runs. But that was so much fun.
We ended up buying one up there.
We bought a freezer because we caught 100 pounds of fish and we shipped it back to the lower 48. And that was so expensive, it was cheaper for us to buy a freezer and stick it in a corner of our RV and fill it up.
Nice.
It went right behind the passenger seat, halfway in the door well and halfway behind the passenger seat. And we lived with it like that for like 3 months.
Yeah.
Now, do you still have salmon today?
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
We've got so much salmon.
Yeah. Salmon, halibut, rockfish, cod. Yeah,
he did a lot of charters to go get halibut and rockfish and all those.
But it's mostly sockeye salmon.
Most of it is sockeye. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. So let's backtrack a little bit and get back to the heart of RV Dreams. How long have you guys been full-timing now?
We moved into our RV May 9th of 2005. We actually went on the road August 3rd of 2005.
Okay.
So we were coming up on 15 years.
And you recently had an announcement. You've decided to settle down.
Yes, we just recently decided, 15 years on the road traveling. We haven't done a whole lot of snowbird stuff where we'll stay for months at a time in a park anywhere. We've been on the move quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen a lot. We're at over 50 national parks, and
it's getting harder and harder to find things that just put us in awe, because we've seen so much and done so much. I don't want to make it sound like we're not, grateful or, but it's just harder and harder to find things that really, really give us that, oh my gosh, feeling. And we started realizing that we were starting to miss community activity, sports related things for him. And I am a very creative person, and love to be around people and be involved with people. Not that we don't have that in this lifestyle, but it's harder in this lifestyle to get involved in, learning how to do things, classes, and I don't know, just a bunch of different things. So we just decided, maybe it's time that we take a break. It may not be the end. We may decide, hey, we missed the road and we're going back on, but we're not getting rid of the motorhome. There's still places we want to go and see and do, but we just decided that, hey, let's settle for a little bit and then see what's coming next.
We're going to be in the villages in Central Florida, the huge active 55 and older community, with every possible function or activity you can think of. And there are already some of our RV Dreams family that are living here, that have gotten off the road in the past few years. And I suspect there will be more. So it's just
we might have an RV Dreams village one day here.
Yeah, we might have our own group here, but still planning to RV. We still want to do the Canadian Maritimes, which we haven't done yet. And so there's still RVing in our future. We're still going to be part of the RV world, but yeah, it's become time for us to open another chapter in our lives, and the RV community has been so wonderful. The people are outstanding, and and I tell people this all the time. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, these last 15 years have been the best 15 years of our lives, and we would leave this earth with absolutely no regrets because we were full-time RVers.
Why don't you change the bus thing to being mauled by a bear?
Okay, yeah, that too.
I mean,
really?
We're on that subject. Yeah. Yeah. I've always told Linda
take his bear 101 class.
Yeah. I've always told her if I get eaten by a bear, make sure she continues to video it,
right?
So she can post it and she'll have some income.
Yeah, and then that would be it would probably be trending on Twitter, and there's all sorts of fun stuff we can do there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, RV Dreams is more than just a website, and we hear you have some exciting event coming up in 2020.
Yes, we are doing another of our educational rallies. They're kind of like educational conference for RVers that are wanting to become full-timers or thinking about it. I think this will be our, lost track, 18th or 19th one. Going to be in Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, April 20th through the 26th. We do 5 days of seminars, pretty intense for new RVers, new full-timers. We even have about 20 to 30% of our attendees that don't have RVs yet, that are still researching the lifestyle, and they want to come and get more information before they make a big investment in an RV. We're having it at the Ridge Outdoor Resort in Tennessee. It's a brand new resort. They have tiny houses for people to stay in, and glamping safari tents for those that don't have RVs yet. And then, of course, there are tons of lodging in the area for those who don't have RVs. We have 60 sites reserved. We do 18 hours of seminars. We have RV driving school is going to be there, providing lessons for people who want those. RV Safety Education Foundation is going to be there, weighing RVs wheel by wheel. We have an RV tech that will be there. We have an RV solar installer that will be there doing some installs and giving quotes. We have some folks from RV Insurance Benefits that will be coming and talking about health insurance for RVers.
We have RVs for Less that will be there with several luxury fifth wheels,
right?
For people to tour, you know, to buy, or or get good looks at luxury fifth wheels.
Yeah, some of the seminars are, buying an RV for full timing. What does it cost to full time? We have a boondocking and solar, internet on the road.
RVing basics, RVing maintenance. I mean, it's everything you could possibly want to know
Working
about
and volunteering on the road, and
RVing and full timing. And of course, you also get to have fun with me, because I I love to make it fun, and there are many times that I'll break out into dancing and acting goofy and all that kind of stuff. So it's a whole lot of fun. Catered meals, just a lot of fun and a lot of learning.
Yeah. So two quick things. If our viewers are interested, where can they get a little bit more information?
It's rv-dreams.com/rally. Okay.
The second one, what are the odds that a Bear School 101 might be at the rally?
Probably not Bear School 101, although we are doing an Alaska seminar now.
Yes.
So we will talk about much of the stuff we talked about here today.
Perfect.
And certainly
we'll have pictures and things like that for people to see some of our encounters.
It may not be Bear School 101, but it may be just a little light education on bears in general.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Absolutely.
Are you going to come, Jim?
You should come. Yeah.
April? Tennessee?
Yeah, it's in April.
I think myself or someone from Wholesale Warranty should be there. That's my personal.
Right.
Howard, just a little bit of time left. Can you tell us a little bit about pickleball? I've heard of it.
Oh my gosh.
Well, pickleball was started on an island in Washington State in the 60s by some folks that were looking for something different to do during their summer.
That the whole family could play.
Yeah. So they basically took a badminton court, put up a low net like a tennis net, got some wooden paddles and some wiffle balls, and started smacking it around and developed rules and this whole thing. So it's been around for a long time, but it's become really popular among seniors because you can play doubles and you don't have to be as athletic. The court is smaller, and
not much running.
There's not as much running in doubles, and people have just loved it. And now younger and younger generations are playing. Tennis courts all over the country are being converted to pickleball courts. They're putting temporary pickleball courts in gyms across the country. It's a really fun little sport that has some strategy to it. And
kind of a cross between tennis, badminton, and ping pong.
Yeah. There are some people who say it's like standing on the ping pong table and playing.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. It is kind of like that. I agree.
Yeah. So, but but it was named, it's got an unfortunate name because it was named after the Cocker Spaniel of one of the developers who kept chasing the balls.
His name was
Okay.
The dog's name was Pickles. So they named it Pickleball after the dog. So, but it's played with these, hard plastic, more sturdy balls than wiffle balls, and now very sophisticated paddles. And but it's a lot of fun. And
tell them how many times a day you play pickleball.
I play every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, and I'm getting better.
Now, will there be some pickleball at the rally in April?
There is a pickleball court at the rally.
Yes.
So we will do some teaching if people are interested. Yep.
I'd be interested.
It's fun. It is so much fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Howard and Linda, thank you so very much for taking time out of your day and sitting down and talking with us. What I believe is that for those that were interested in going to Alaska or just traveling in general, they got a lot out of this. Even for myself, just the idea of getting Alaska on the radar and listening to you guys speak so passionately about it is inspiring. And I really thank you for taking the time to tell your story.
Can I say one more thing before we
Please.
get off?
Please.
Because I was so afraid of the roads. That's what you always hear, is that the roads are horrible going to Alaska.
Yeah.
And I just want to ease people's minds. The roads are not that bad. There are sections where the road is kind of rough, but I was envisioning like 200 miles of gravel roads and, huge potholes and all of these horrible road conditions. It is paved the entire way, but what you will encounter are frost heaves, which is where the pavement kind of sinks and creates these heaves in the pavement. But all of them are marked so well that it gives you time to slow down to go over these areas. So I just want to ease people's minds on how, I don't want to take my RV, it'll trash it. It doesn't. We towed our Jeep and not a single chip in the windshield. You always hear about these horrible road conditions.
Understand that even in the last few years, improvements have been made. So even if somebody went just 3-4 years ago, improvements have been made since then. So,
but I think the misnomer comes from people who went years ago,
right,
and they come back talking about how horrible it was. Well, that just keeps being re-said over and over and over. And
don't get us wrong, there's some really bad sections.
There's some sections that weren't
but it's
so
nothing
great.
I would worry about.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a great point, especially to bring up, is that is the unknown, right? And people will reach to stories that they've heard or what have you.
Right.
And for you guys doing it firsthand, saying that they're really not that difficult or that bad, and there are issues with it, but they do a good job of articulating when those issues may come, or to slow down and take your time, and that it is not only doable, but it's not something that should bring added stress to the trip itself.
Correct, because it scared me to death. I was so worried about the roads, and I mean, they just weren't that bad.
And that's with a planner like Howard.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
imagine
the rest of us trying to do it.
And if people are interested, I did 3 or 4 journal entries on the planning back in February or something like that. So if people just want to Google RV-Dreams Alaska Planning, those entries will pop up and they can do that. And if you want to see what we did, we have 144 days of individual journal entries that people can go through and just read our complete experience. Everybody will do it differently, but
do it.
Yeah. But do it.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited for April. Thank you for everything that you, not only how you support Wholesale Warranties, but more importantly, the RV community. And again, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And all you guys at Wholesale Warranties. We've been working with you since 2012. And, you know, as I say many times, all we have is our reputation of who we deal with and who we partner with. And, you know, the warranty business is tough from a public relations standpoint. And we wouldn't be with you guys this long if you guys didn't provide so good service to all of our customers. So thanks to all of you guys at Wholesale.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. We look forward to talking with you guys soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.